I grew up in a very abusive household, verbally, physically, mentally, and absolutely emotionally. My father had immense anger issues, and I, somewhere between by choice and by default, was a very angry person. And I would just find myself crying from the emptiness and the feelings of meaninglessness. So I found out roughly 5 years ago that I was going to be a dad. And knowing that I was bringing a life into this world, I didn't want to pass that on as my legacy. And that meant addressing lifelong traumas. And all the survival mechanisms I had, all the coping mechanisms I had, weren't working. If I don't dig in and ask God for some help, I'm not going anywhere. I ended up here at Southbrook in the counseling ministry, and it started a very funny conversation about forgiveness, that I needed to forgive my dad after like the second conversation I had. And I pretty much laughed and walked out, and the more that we got into it, the more I was like, man, I really got a lot of issues. Like, all I know is that this is something I have to have, or my life is never going to change the crash course that it's on. I guess let's strap in and do this. So I made this trip down to Virginia. I called my father and said, hey, what you doing? And he decided he'd meet me, but we sat down, and what I told him were all the things I hated about him. He's sexually traumatized multiple siblings of mine. And there are people that are walking out on this patio, this little barbecue joint we're at, and they're sitting down and they're like, oh my God, like what is going on over here? I found out some things about him that I didn't divulge. He was sexually traumatized as a kid. And so I had a lot more empathy for him. So when I got to this place, instead of being a middle finger conversation, which is what it started out to be, I knew that I had to acknowledge the good and the bad and extend him grace that I don't believe he deserved from me. And that was a very tough thing. I got the first genuine apology I've ever gotten from him. And I didn't see it going that way. There is a level to the depth of spirituality behind actually having that kind of emotional release. And I hadn't had it for 30 plus years. And I'm sure it sounds weird, but it was literally like a fog being lifted. So I drive home, and on that drive home, I start to think about what else needed fixed. And I realized that I had a responsibility to start trying to make amends. And I went home and I apologized to my wife. I started to learn about forgiveness again from another perspective. But for the first time in my life, I'm looking around and I'm like, I'm happy. I really realized that if you lean into it and you take God at His word, you'll find out that 100% of the time it's worth it.